Welcome to the You Can Man podcast, episode 45. I'm Josh.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Dave.
And on this week's episode, hey, Wiretap, can my dog eat pancakes?
Hi, guys. Welcome back to the You Can Man podcast, where we believe what one man can do, you can do as well. You know, with some help from your friends and the proper know-how. And so we hope that you guys find that on our podcast. And we always start off the show with kind of shooting the breeze a little bit, finding out what happened in each other's lives recently. So, guys, what's been going on?
Not a whole lot. It's been kind of a slow week, but I just noticed on the table we got a couple blades laying out, and that's making me happy. Yeah. You guys know I'm a pocket knife guy. I love pocket knives, and we got knives on the table. You wouldn't
be happy if mine was sitting out there because you dog
just the
on
fact
mine.
That if you had one on the table, it would make me happy. So
I think mine's in the car.
Okay, that's not good. But yeah, it's been a good week.
Cool.
We had some torrential rain in the past week here. I have some major runoff issues.
Ooh.
Yeah, me too. In my house.
Major runoff issues.
Yeah. And that's the time to look, and we discussed it before.
How domestic are we? Talking about our rainwater runoff issues.
When it's raining hard, everyone should get their umbrella out.
Yes.
Take a stroll around the yard and see what's going on.
I totally agree.
So I've mitigated most of it in my garage. So my neighbor's yard slopes down into my yard and it straight into my garage, which is on a slab.
Yeah, because we kind of built up, or built up a kind of a berm.
Yeah, there's a swale there is what it's called.
Swale.
And I actually dug in behind the swale to make it deeper so that it could actually retain more water, and that helped a lot. So it used to just kind of run into my garage, huge pool of water in the middle of my garage. This time it was more of a trickle.
What about installing a pump that just shoots directly over to their house?
Just sends it back.
I need to regrade a little bit.
It's a subtle message.
Install a French drain probably right up against the house there, but we're not there.
I need that too. I've got a little gable front porch, and there are no gutters. That's a newer porch that was installed right before I moved in, and there are no gutters on it. So I've got some major runoff coming off. I guess it's not runoff, but it's coming off of that porch and just
pounds the ground.
Yeah, pounds the ground, gets into the crawl space.
You should do, there was these.
I was going to ask you, so it would be two probably 5 foot long sections of gutter.
I think it's going to look odd. I think having those.
You think so?
Yeah, I think having those big.
I've got to have it though.
Well, I was going to mention, I saw in this old house and they had some sort of, it was okay, so they still had gutters, but it was some sort of downspout, but it wasn't a downspout.
Well, the downspout is what's
that's what's really aesthetically
right. And I'm like, I'll do it myself, but I've thought about that downspout, and I'm like, I'm never going to get that thing to look right. So I don't quite know what to do.
Let me look into that information because I think it's more or less like.
Was it a chain?
Yes, it was a chain. That's right.
Yeah, find that.
And then the water just trickles down.
Yeah, it just.
Because of the surface tension, the water sticks to...
It clings to the chain as it goes down.
I've never seen that.
That's a better way to say it.
So most of the water still dumps right there.
So the chain looks more normal than a downspout?
It's from the road, it's less
exactly.
impactful.
Your eye doesn't go to it like a massive white downspout or something.
That's probably what I need. Yeah. I got to do something, though.
The other thing you could do possibly is I've seen people... It's probably not going to look great on the roof, but like a little channel... like a L-shaped piece of flashing or something that'll push the water out towards the front side of that just to kind of direct it at a specific point instead of just sheeting off.
Yeah,
right on.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do something about it, but I would look into that.
Yeah.
But that's great advice, Josh, about when it's raining a lot, seriously, get your umbrella, go outside your house and look around and walk around in the rain and watch where the rainwater is going. Great advice.
That's not my only issue because there's tons of others, but that's the one that gets into my house. So that's the one I'm going to pay attention to. But I've got other areas where water pools up in the yard that I don't like. But
yeah, I've got something to share kind of related to our Great Outdoors episode and just kind of getting outside and enjoying God's creation. I had a dad win this week, so I took the kids to one of my favorite spots along the trail that I've been hiking at Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park. That is right close to us. But there's a section of the park called Pigeon Hill, and part of the battle was there. But it's all these like just massive granite outcroppings, and the kids loved it. And so then I took them there one day, and then they were asking to go back.
Nice.
So I took them back again today,
That is
and
fun.
just exploring. A little nervous when they get up on these massive boulders, and you just envision that they're going to trip.
Yep.
They're going to fall.
That'd
and
be
their head's
bad.
just going to crack open.
You're
And
right there by
so
the hospital, though. So.
You're constantly careful, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I audibly said, like Luke said, I just don't want to take the risk. I was like, well, you know, sometimes it's good to take the risk.
YOLO.
You know? I was like, I'm not saying that you can't or shouldn't do it. I'm saying just be cautious.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle. We have now 3 boys, and the older 2 are wild 24/7. And yeah, I have to bite my tongue to not say, be careful, like every
Yeah.
5 minutes. Because, I mean, I have 4 brothers, and we were in the emergency room all the time. And we had half the supervision that my kids have. Through no fault of my parents, it was the 80s.
The world
and,
is more padded
kids
these days.
can figure it out. And I always keep that in the back of my mind because that's how I was raised. And I think my brothers and I are pretty resilient, like when it comes to physical things.
Meh.
Yeah, let's get it on right here. But I think, it's healthy for parents to make the kids aware of the risks, but don't.
That's what I try to do. I try to not sugarcoat it. And so I literally said, I'm telling you this because I don't want you to trip when you're on the big rock and fall down and crack your head open.
Yeah.
That's why I don't want you to do that.
Keeping it
just
real.
Do it, but just let's be a little careful.
There's science behind if you tell a kid their entire lives, be careful, don't do that they are insanely risk averse when they're adults.
Yeah, and I don't want that.
Right. So
I don't want that.
Yeah. Good tip there, but cool that your kids want to go back to a cool outdoors place.
Yeah, we'll have to take all the kids there, guys.
Let's do it.
All right, let's get into this topic. So we're talking all about, am I being listened to by the devices that I have in my house, the device that I have on my person 24/7?
Yeah.
And, you know, you guys have heard about this for years and years. Are the devices that I have in my home and my phone, are they listening to me? And we've all certainly experienced when you see that ad that came up, when you just talked about something the day before and you're like, what is going on here? So we wanted to talk through that. So Josh has got a lot of good information he's going to be sharing. But first, we wanted to talk kind of more in generalities about how many Americans think that this is already happening. So just kind of some stats to share from the Pew Research Center, and they're legit. Yes, I mean we could certainly say
survey
agreed
that
provider.
Pew Research Center is very qualified
as a polling company.
As a polling company, for sure. Okay, now there's lots of numbers involved in this, and I'm actually not going to quote the actual numbers.
Yeah, don't do too many of those.
Yeah, I will link the article
Very good.
if you want to see the actual numbers, but I'll be using just terms of a majority or less or stuff like that.
Yeah. Before we start, one
go
caveat,
ahead.
like we say this on most of our episodes, and it applies here. None of us around this table are experts in this field. We
Not at
all
all.
have opinions, and we've done research on our own and try to kind of gather some facts and figures, and then we're going to discuss it. And I think just to mention the Facebook group again, like you guys gave us tons of feedback last week, and I think this follows right up that alley. What people are looking for.
Yeah, this is an example of a show that's not. I mean, we already talked DIY stuff, but it's it's different than what we normally talk about. But we think it's really interesting, so we think you guys will think it's really interesting. So
For sure.
Yeah, let's get into some of this information that I found on Pew Research Center. So this is a study that they did. This article that I'm reading, I think they quote a lot of stuff a lot of past surveys that they did, but this was posted November 15th of 2019. So this is really Current.
Within a year, I feel like is current.
Let's have it.
Yeah.
All right, so number one, Americans definitely are concerned about how much data is being collected about them, and many of them feel their information is less secure than it used to be. It says a majority of Americans say they're at least somewhat concerned about how much data is collected by them, or about them by both companies and the government. So that's no surprise. I mean, I think that's across the board. The majority of us think, yeah.
Well, let's talk about, the 1960s even. I think a lot of Americans were very suspicious of our government, mostly at that time, of surveillance and spying. And that kind of dovetails into the title of this episode when I said, hey, Wiretap, because that's what it was called in the 60s.
Go ahead and explain that meme, because I think a lot of people that heard that title probably know what you're talking about.
So the title was, again, hey, Wiretap, can my dog eat pancakes? And so I got that off of a meme that's on the internet. And the meme, the upper picture is a woman that looks like she lives in the 1960s. And it says something along the lines of, oh, I better not say that because the government might wiretap my house and be spying on me. And then the lower color picture from a modern woman is asking, hey, Wiretap, which is your Alexa device or your Amazon device, can my dog eat pancakes? So we've kind of invited this surveillance into our own home.
Yeah, it's this weird dichotomy of that we as Americans love our freedom,
love the convenience.
It's the convenience.
At the same time, we're just like, hey, Wiretap, what's up with that?
Yeah.
Now, me personally, I don't want any of that in my house. Actually, you know, we got some smart light bulbs, and I was kind of like, oh,
yeah.
Isn't that weird? For just like a second there, I was like, no, I don't know.
No, it's not weird at all. And I don't know how. I think the three of us are pretty aligned in this topic.
Are we just really old men?
No, I wear a tinfoil hat when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Well, we grew up in, what's called the Oregon Trail generation is one of the names, but we're kind of in between Gen X and millennials where we did not grow up with the internet. Like from birth through college, really, we were not online socializing. It wasn't until we were kind of in college that the internet really came about in a big way to the most people. So we didn't grow up with it. And so we're kind of the last generation that's really leery of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we all have iPhones. And so we really already have this on our person all the time. So by me saying I don't want that in my home, it's kind of a misnomer because I have it in my home in the form of my iPhone. I'm just talking about, like the Alexa or the Google Home stuff. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, and one of the articles I pulled up was, directly related to these voice control devices. And earlier in 2019, Amazon's SVP of devices announced that they had sold their 100 millionth Alexa-enabled device. That's crazy. And Amazon has by far the biggest market share of this over over Google and over like Siri. Siri's kind of not considered one of these big players because Apple, they're not really in this game. It's really Amazon and Google going after this. So, but anyway, they have 70% of the market share, and that's about 100 million devices. They say 1 in 5 adults own a home voice assistant in America.
Wow, that is crazy.
And I would have thought it's more than that.
Well, I think it's higher now because this Christmas specifically, I ran into friends and relatives who I was kind of shocked at how many people got their Alexa this year, like for this Christmas of 2019.
I saw the same thing.
And so I'm like, wow, that's a new wave of devices that just entered the market.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't want that in my home, but at the same time, I still hold these same sentiments of these stats that I'm kind of going over that. I think that they're totally listening, and I think that they could totally get the information. And I'm almost like, I don't want to say that I don't care, but it's kind of more of this like apathy where I'm like, well, look, if they really wanted the information on me, they could easily get it with all of the things, all the places that I'm out online from. And so the next thing actually is talking about that. The majority of the public believes much of their online activities are being tracked.
Sure.
No big surprise there whatsoever. And again, they have like a breakdown of age brackets, male, female, this kind of stuff. So I'll link the thing there. But the next one, large shares of Americans do not think it is possible to go about daily life without corporate and government entities collecting data about them. Would you guys agree? I mean, I would.
If you are using a smartphone in any way,
yes,
you are being tracked.
You are being data mined all day long.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see how much of it, information is going to the government, because I mean I know it's a fact that ads are tracked on your phone, or there's ad-based tracking on your phone, so kind of targeted ads based on searches that you do, things like that. That's
how they make money.
That is how they make money, and that goes on. And so I'd be curious to know how much of the information goes, past these companies and then into the hands of the government.
Interesting you say that, because one article I read here says that I was kind of giving examples of these devices kind of going off the rails, where an Amazon device recorded like 1,700 audio snippets and somehow messaged those to a friend, so that it recorded a conversation, like 1,700 snippets of conversation, and sent them via, I don't know if it was text or email, to a friend of this person.
Yeah, I'd
now
be
the
in big
conversation
trouble.
was just literally about hardwood floors. Like this man and his wife were talking about hardwood floors, but those files got sent to a friend somehow. And like these things happen, not in huge amounts, but enough to make you concerned. But back to the government thing, there was a case in New Hampshire where an Amazon Echo recorded during a double murder in a home. And the judge ordered Amazon to release the records of the recording that happened inside the home.
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah. So this gets heavy into government and politics.
Did they release it?
And I'm not sure.
So I heard a similar thing. It wasn't related to a murder case, but it had to do with Apple, and there was some sort of legal argument in some court system where the courts were trying to get Apple to release this information, and
no.
Apple was saying, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's kind of a red line that we're crossing if we do that. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think they released it. I don't remember the specifics of it though.
Yeah. So the concern is that the government, and this is any government, U.S. government, wherever you are, could start promoting this as a safety and like a crime prevention thing, almost like a Minority Report type operation, where if people know they're being recorded all the time, that's going to make us all safer, right? And I mean, you see that in the UK, like there's cameras on every street, like in London, like you cannot walk down a street without being recorded. And it's just weird because if you're in like an authoritarian company, you can just gather all this audio, send it straight to the government in a movement to like reduce crime.
I don't think that there's any stopping this. I really don't. I don't think that there's going to be enough of a push from enough people that will actually care enough to do.
I agree. I think it's difficult to come back.
It is here to stay. Do you really think that these, just even on a local level, like these, I guess City of London, that's huge, but do you really think that they're going to start taking down cameras?
Right.
No.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, and to go back to the topic we're on is like kind of your personal devices that we're using. But if you want to get really freaked out, you should listen to the Edward Snowden podcast. When Edward Snowden was on Joe Rogan's podcast, that is a mind-blowing podcast. And that will cause you a lot of hesitation, in my opinion.
I heard that same podcast, and it was pretty eye-opening, what he had to say.
Yeah. So the truth is, the bottom line is that the only way to get around this kind of stuff is just simply not to use it.
That's
really where you are.
Personally, I ran into a situation. This was several years ago, and I know that we've all kind of had these things come up, but this was the first time it happened to me. I was in a meeting I was sitting in around a large conference table, It was me. I was for work. And so I was sitting with a bunch of other engineers and architects. And these architects were sitting around the table. My phone was in my pocket. I do not allow Siri. I have Siri turned off on my phone. My phone was in my pocket, but there were a bunch of phones on the table, sitting on the table. And there was a conversation about what kind of fans are we going to use in this building. And the architects kept saying, we think we want to use the company Big Ass Fans was the name.
I knew you were going to say that.
It was the name they kept saying, we're going to use Big Ass Fans. They kept talking about it. And it was like a 15-minute conversation. I'm just sitting there listening to them. So whatever, we go through the meeting. The meeting's over. I don't remember if I went back to work or if I was at home, but I opened up Facebook on my phone a couple hours later, and the first ad that popped up, it was a guy. It was his back. He was really sweaty, and it was an ad for Big Ass Fans.
Wow. On Facebook, and you hadn't searched for it.
I didn't. I was not a part of the conversation. I was just sitting there. Structural engineers don't care what kind of fans you put in your building. That's not something. Well, I guess we do because of the weight.
Hold them up.
Yeah, we have to support them. But in general, we don't care what it is.
You were listening.
I was sitting there listening. I didn't.
You think your phone was?
I was not searching for Big Ass Fans on my phone, but that ad came up again. My phone was in my pocket, so I feel like it's difficult. It would be more difficult for my phone to hear them talking about it. So then I'm thinking about the phones that were around the table, and I'm like, how did it know?
So
It really bothered me. I haven't. So this was 4 or 5 years ago. I haven't had Facebook, the app, on my phone since that day. I took it off that day.
That's not.
I like you, Dave. I respect you. For
yeah,
that.
It just bothered me, man. Like that bothers me. That's that is. I will give it to them if I search for something and then it pops up. I mean, I feel like I can't avoid that, but if they are listening to my microphone, or even worse, if it's going through someone else's phone and it knows that I'm near them, like that is just way too far for me.
So I think this is a great segue into kind of this other article that I got into that takes us into, so we all know that if you bring in an Alexa, for instance, like a voice-enabled device that is designed to basically be always on and always listening and waiting for your cue to fire it up, that inside your house, that device is listening. And I want to make that very clear to everyone out there that's listening. That device is always listening. It's always waiting for you to say, hey, Alexa, or whatever you say.
You're not supposed to say that on a recording, Josh, because then people could be listening to this.
And it says, I'll wake your phone. I'll wake your device up right now.
Wakes your thing up, yeah.
All right, well, it's not in my house. So we all know that part. But what about Dave's situation? What about our iPhones? What about our Androids? So this company did some research on that conspiracy theory, because it's been out there a long time, probably as long as 4 or 5 years.
It's not a conspiracy theory.
Dave has been doing that. And, Facebook has said over and over, we don't do that. We don't do that. But no one believes them because these ads are so incredibly targeted. And so in early 2019, Bloomberg released a story about how Facebook was piloting a program within the Facebook Messenger app, which people had to opt into to record conversations, because you can do voice conversations through Facebook Messenger. And the idea was to see how good their transcription service provider was. So they would audio record the conversations on Messenger, and then the computer itself, or whatever, I don't know even what you call it, the thing that transcribes it. So it turns all that conversation into text, which would be searchable text in a file that can then be handed over to advertisers to advertise. Now, again, you had to opt into this, and it was just through the Facebook Messenger app, right? Well, Facebook said, yeah, that we did that. The customer had to opt in, and some people were like, well, what did you really tell them while they were opting in? Of course, that's always a question. But the headline of their article was, of course, Facebook admits that it was listening to your private conversations. Now,
right.
That sent out a wave of worse conspiracy theories being confirmed. People are just saying, I knew it.
Chances are good if you had read the privacy policy related to that, because that was one of the things on this Pew Research. Almost all Americans have been asked to agree to privacy policies, but fewer actually read them. Duh.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
Who does that?
Yeah. So Facebook says, yes, we were doing this. We were listening to your microphone while you hit record, and then we were transcribing that stuff, and you had to opt into it. Okay, well, this just led to worse accusations. So a company, again, went to Facebook. Facebook, again, denied that they were listening to you when you didn't want them to. So a company called Wandera, that's a cybersecurity company, set out to test these phone snooping theories. And what they did is they put an iPhone and a Samsung Galaxy in a room, and they would play a loop of pet food ads for 30 minutes over 3 days. A recording would play, and it would be all about pet food, right? Or all about dog food. All of the apps on the phone were enabled. The experiment had two main goals: to see if a number of apps were scanning following the experiment, to see whether pet food ads actually started popping up on these apps that were on the phone. And secondly, to track the data, and this is actually the more important part, to track what data was being transferred and what kind of battery usage happened in the background. Because if the phone was always listening, you would see the kind of battery consumption and information being sent to the cloud that you would on one of those Alexa devices. You would see that on the phone. So the results were, and they did a test, they had test phones as well, like they did a, what you call it when you do a test?
A control group.
A control group, thank you.
What you call it?
And so they said, not surprisingly to these folks, no pet food advertisements showed up on any of the apps that were on the phone. And there was no difference.
It's because they're one step ahead of you.
There was no difference in data consumption or battery use or background activity or anything like that. It says that for the phones to actually be listening all the time, it would kill the battery like immediately. You would have no battery life. And again,
did Facebook and Apple sponsor this this research study?
Oh yeah, they did. No, I'm just kidding. No, so this was Wandera. And anyway, and again, the information being transmitted to the cloud. It wasn't much data at all. Like nothing was being sent out while these phones were on and while this audio track was running. So an ex-Facebook product manager who has been vocally critical of the company said the exact same thing. He said, if your phone was on all the time, you couldn't even use it because it would burn the battery up so fast.
That makes sense though, right? Like if the microphone were always, but it is always on. If you have, the Hey Siri feature enabled, then it is always listening, I would assume. Now,
it's always listening for that. I don't know, but it's not transmitting.
That seems like a smart way or a smart thing to test though is I can't remember exactly what you said, but it looked at the battery usage as it went up and down throughout it makes sense. So anyway, they got stats on like how much data was being sent, but in 2017, a PhD student at Northeastern University was studying the same issue of whether phones were listening in on conversations without us knowing. It became quickly obvious that the phones were not being activated and the microphones were not being activated on the phones. But they did find some other disconcerting things, which I think we're going to get to the bottom of, Dave, with your example. Says there were no audio leaks. They added like 90 apps onto this phone or something like that. And like none of the apps activated the microphone. Out of 17,000 Android apps that were available, 9,000 of them, this is the crazy thing, had the potential permission to take screenshots. So while the phone wasn't listening, there were apps that were automatically taking screenshots of themselves and sending them to third parties. And in one case, one app actually took a video of the screen activity and sent that information off to a third party. So the potential with this is crazy because that means you could actually like physically type something and then like delete it and not send whatever you were about to send.
Oh, yeah.
And that could get recorded and sent off. And so these are other big things that you need to be aware of. And obviously the more useful your phone is to you, like the more ways you use your phone, the more apps you use, the more attractive it is to people trying to advertise or hack or anybody that just wants your data in general. Ultimately, the harsh truth is that your phone knows who your friends are, what they're interested in, who you're spending time with. It can track you physically across all of your devices and even watch you write something that you end up deleting and never actually send. For Dave's example, I think that's exactly what happened. I think somebody in that room went and searched Big Ass Fans. You were in proximity with their phone, and they said, "Oh, we're going to shoot this guy." That's kind of
very possible.
That's probably an easy situation for how sophisticated their algorithms are. Is that you see 12 people around a table, and 4 of those people were searching Big Ass Fans. They're going to send an ad to everybody that was at that table,
right?
And so that's kind of the bottom line on that. There's no recording actively today going on, at least that anybody can find. And the phones aren't powerful enough to do that, but they are tracking you in every other way.
I can just hear 7 out of 10 people that are listening to you say that right now on this podcast. They're listening to it and they're like, that thing's listening.
That's probably.
I don't think there's any convincing
there. And I didn't even read like half of the other examples of how they track you and like put pieces together, but it's insanely sophisticated.
Again, at the end of the day, I'm just like, if they want to find out the information, they totally can. I don't know.
Well,
imagine what these big companies can do.
That's where the problem to me comes in, because like I can sit here and be like, well, I have nothing to hide, so I bring it on, like look through all my emails or whatever. But when you start like looking up somebody or it
gets weird.
Or when I'm doing my research on my weird morbid segments about how people die and like fall down elevator shafts and crash on airplanes, and I'm looking up and now I'm on some like list because this guy like searches all kinds of ways to kill people, like or how people can die potentially, So that's where the problem comes in, is when
they all think that I'm like 80 years old because I'm researching like the demise of the American.
Yeah, he's not a threat. I think that the happy medium was the flip phone. We could all stay in contact with each other. You could call somebody,
text,
but you weren't. There wasn't a huge invasion of privacy there.
Yeah.
It's not. We're not going back, though. I don't think it's happening.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more quick things on this Pew Research saying most Americans see more risks than benefits from personal data collection. They think that, but yet they're still using all this stuff. So that's
convenience. American convenience trumps a lot of this stuff, sadly.
Well, that's I'm surprised to hear you say that, Tim, because I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like I'm kind of the crazy one with the tinfoil hat and the fan story. But I'm curious to see.
There's a difference between thinking it and acting on it.
That's what I mean, because I think there's so many people that you would talk to them and be like, "Yeah, I don't want the government listen in, but I got one of those Alexa things for Christmas."
Yeah. See, that's what I'm curious to see how, where's the red line for people? Where are people going to make
I'm saying. I don't think people are going to
crazy incidents. It's going to take those crazy like headline making incidents where people are like, okay, we're done with that.
However, think about the monumental data breaches that we have had even in the past 5 years. That hasn't largely affected a ton of people's
behavior.
Yeah.
Yep. And this reminded me of one quick thing, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but Destin Sandlin on Smarter Every Day. He has the Smarter Every Day channel on YouTube. I think we talked about him last episode or a couple episodes ago. He recently did a video where there's a guy, I don't know if he's a grad student or a professor or what, but he figured out how to send through a laser, like a light laser, sound, like mimic sound waves, which means he can point a laser at the microphone on a voice-enabled device and get it to activate. Wow. So through pulses that are sent through this laser, he can vibrate the microphone to make it think it's hearing sound using light. Now that means when they were testing it at his own house, they like put some like a thermostat that was voice enabled, like, hey, set the temperature to 73 degrees. So they would record that, and then this guy's program could turn that into a laser thing, and they could go through someone's window, and if it's in the line of sight, someone with a laser and that capability could activate, and they were able to do it. They were able to change the temperature in his house from outside using a laser.
Whoa.
Now, the problem with that, they took it all the way to the further of unlocking doors, opening up garage doors, turning on someone's phone.
Yeah, we got to move underground. It's the only solution.
Anyway, go watch that video. It's very, very interesting.
All right, guys. So a lot of interesting conversation going on here with all this data, what's being shared and whatnot. We would love to hear what you guys think on the Facebook group page.
Tons of activity there. We released our whiskey video not too long ago.
Yes.
And most people seem to really enjoy it. So maybe we'll have some other filmed segments.
Yeah, well, including tastings, because I had left a comment on the whiskey, or someone left a comment on the whiskey video, and they said, I need y'all to do like other drinking, whatever. Sometimes I think that we should do one on craft beer.
We need to do a chocolate tasting, because Tim gave me some very dark chocolate at the beginning of this podcast, and I said it brought tears to my eyes.
That was some high quality 85% Aldi chocolate.
It was too much for me.
All right, so we'll try to do maybe a craft beer.
Yeah, throw us ideas. There's plenty of ideas on that video link. But
but I have a feeling that when people listen to this podcast, there's going to be someone in our Facebook group page that is like some sort of expert on this.
Someone in there says they work in cybersecurity.
Well, there you go.
Now, I work for a cybersecurity company, but I don't sell it, so I don't really know much.
Gotcha. Okay, I think that'll do it for today's show. Except we've got a bonus segment coming up, guys. We always do the bonus segment, so Josh has that this week. So we will be back after the break.
Coming at you.
This episode is sponsored by 1776 United. 1776 United is a patriotic and historically inspired lifestyle brand. They make the best patriotic shirts and apparel on the market today. I personally own many of their products, and if you want to don patriotic gear without looking gaudy, check them out on Instagram, Facebook, and at 1776united.com.
All right, guys, welcome back. Josh, you got the segment for us this week. What you got, man?
So, and look, I'm going with my theme.
Is somebody dying?
Of morbid
yes.
ways to die. So, this one is called Dynamite Sniper.
Okay, catch our listeners up just real quickly, just in case you're just joining the UK Man podcast. Josh has been doing a lot of these bonus segments on death-related really
bizarre ways to die.
Look, since college, back in college times, Josh used to watch videos called Faces of Death.
How
all
dare
right, so it was
or bizarre ways to survive.
Yeah,
I mean there was that.
Speaking of Faces of Death, I heard within the past few years that those were all faked.
Really?
Yeah, that it was like a guy, like a movie maker guy.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so it wasn't that bad. Here we go. So this one's called Dynamite Sniper. The question is, what caused a semi-truck to explode on an interstate near Joplin, Missouri in 1970, leaving a crater 50 feet by 70 feet by 25 feet deep?
That's a lot of energy.
What?
Yeah, 25
I didn't even know this
crater.
ever happened. So
Was it dynamite?
It's dynamite, Dave, which good guess based on my title. Truck driving, 1 a.m, blows up, leaves a crater. What's up with that?
I'm guessing no truck driver survived that incident.
Yeah, so the truck also did not survive. All right, so 1970, it was the 70s. It was a wild time. A company called Tri-State Motor Transit Company, which was a trucking company. The workers there went on strike. They were unionized. They went on strike looking for a new contract. And the strike began on September 14th, 1970. The guys obviously didn't go to work, and then they started picketing at the business. And so the company was essentially shut down. All their truck drivers quit. But there was plenty of people looking for work, and so people started crossing the picket lines. Back in the day in Missouri, you don't do that, okay?
Yeah, you don't be crossing any
picket lines. Well, some of these drivers that crossed the picket lines, they started driving trucks and making money. Well, 2 of the fellas that were strikers, Bobby Lee Schuler,
They always have 3 names.
and
You know what I'm saying?
Gerald. Both of these guys have the middle name of Lee, if that tells you anything. Bobby Lee Schuler and Gerald Lee Bowen, both 29.
No relation.
Both 29 at the time, decided that they were going to mess with anybody who was crossing the picket line. So they were going to make these guys pay, right? When you're out of work, well, not out of work, when you voluntarily quit your job to strike, you got a lot of free time on your hands, right?
Sure.
Because, if your picket shift isn't up, you can just stay at home and drink beer, which is what these guys did. So one afternoon, they just were pounding beers, drinking whiskey all afternoon in Joplin, Missouri. And they were like, hey, does so-and-so have a rifle? And they're like, yeah, he does. So they went to another union guy and said, can we borrow your 30-30 rifle and some ammo? And the other guy's like, of course.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
You've been drinking all day. Here you go. So these guys, again, very drunk, get a rifle. And Bobby and Gerald get in the car into Bobby's girlfriend's car.
This sounds like a scene from the movie Joe Dirt.
It does. And Gerald's wife. So there's 2 guys, 2 girls. In the car with the gun, and they start driving to Springfield, okay, from Joplin. If you don't know where that is, it doesn't matter.
I don't know.
I believe it's Joplin to Springfield is west to east in Missouri. So they start heading to Springfield, which is a big city, and they are on Highway 65, and on the way out there, they actually grab another 8-pack of beer on their way.
Got to.
It said 8-pack, which is kind of weird.
That is a little strange.
But all the reports said 8-pack, and all the court proceedings said 8-pack.
So you went through and checked. Is that a typo?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess 8-pack was the thing back then. So
It was like in a box.
Yeah, they're drunk. They're driving. They have a rifle. They grab an 8-pack of beer. And on Highway 65, they see a truck coming the other way, and it's a tri-state truck.
And they said, no, sir.
They're like, no, sir. So Bobby tells his girlfriend, hey, turn this car around, because it was coming the other way. Turn this car around. We're going to go get that truck. So they go to get that truck, and they pass the truck. As they're passing it, Bobby sits up on the passenger side window outside the car with the gun and shoots at this truck and fires 3 shots into it and actually disables the truck. He's shooting into the grill of this truck. Disables the truck. They just keep going. Yeehaw. Let's find another one. Yep. And so that truck driver was unharmed. He just pulled over and broke down. But he did give a description of the vehicle. So around 1 a.m., so later that night, they're still on the prowl, and this time they're on Interstate 44. Sure enough, 2 tri-state trucks, in a convoy, are coming the other way again. So Bobby says, girlfriend, turn this car around. So she cuts through the median, chases the truck back down. They start passing these trucks. Now, one of the trucks is a flatbed. The first truck is a flatbed truck. The second truck is a van-type truck, so it's covered. You can't see it. But that truck has 4 big stickers on the side that read explosives. Okay?
That's obviously the one you're shooting at.
Yeah. So Bobby and Gerald both know that, because they both have worked for this company for years, that about half of their trucks carry dynamite daily down that interstate. Okay? Doesn't matter when you're drunk and excited. So Bobby tells his girlfriend, get off at this get way past him. We're going to get off at this next exit and go over the overpass. Now, he tells the ladies that he has to relieve himself. That's why we're going to pull over. Well, he does, but after he relieves himself, pops the trunk, gets the rifle out. I don't even know if it was in the trunk, but he gets the rifle out. And so he's kind of standing not on the overpass, but on an exit ramp that's looking down the highway where these trucks are coming. As the first truck is coming, he fires 2 shots into the first truck's grill, and it doesn't do anything because he's like 300 yards out. So the second truck that's covered with the word explosives on the side of it, the
big one,
he fires off 2 shots into the grill. His third shot detonated 21 tons of Gel-X #1 dynamite. I don't know what Gel-X #1 is, but it sounds fancy.
It doesn't sound good.
It sounds like it has a lot of energy. So 21 tons of dynamite just goes off about 300, I think 300 yards. No, 400. No. Anyway, 300 yards away from where Bobby's standing. Now, this blast...
Was that like a 1 in a million chance of a bullet hitting?
It was unclear. The 30-30 rifle, and I don't know what type of round it was using, but they did tests of this, actually, because that was one of the questions that came up.
So how in the world did that?
It was like 50-50, like it'll set off the dynamite.
Yeah, if you dynamite, it's super volatile if it's
that's why
disturbed,
in the
right?
in the old movies, they would or the old cartoons, they would be like super careful while they're carrying it. Now, it's not that unstable, but
you don't want to be firing rifles.
A high-powered rifle can detonate it. I
would just assume that even in 1970, the dynamite would have come far enough to where it wouldn't have been that volatile.
Yeah, there was talk of maybe it like hit the gas tank or like all it had to do
chain
could
reaction,
like ricochet off metal and cause like a massive spark.
Yeah, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I wouldn't be shooting at dynamite.
The fact of the matter is, when he pulled the trigger for his third shot,
Bobby Lee knew that thing had.
He did.
Yeah.
Now, sadly, the driver of the truck, his name was John Galt, oddly. He's 48 years old, father of 4, making his first run for the company.
Now we can say, like, who is John Galt? Oh, yeah, he's that guy in Missouri, 1970, right. And he was driving a truck full of dynamite, and it exploded.
Yeah.
That's what John Galt is.
That truck was disintegrated. One of the driver's hands was found 450 feet away.
What?
The largest piece left of the truck was only an 8-foot section of the solid frame.
Wow.
Like, that was the largest piece of the truck that was found. It scattered the truck for a quarter of a mile in all directions.
I got to think Bobby Lee didn't survive. 300 yards away?
Here's what's crazy is Bobby Lee, so when he pulled the trigger on his third shot, the next thing he knows is that his shirt is almost ripped off. The rifle has left his hands.
I would have thought the shirt was gone, miles back.
The windshield of the car was shattered. A nearby gas station had the roof like rippled up. Windows were shattered and items were knocked off shelves in Springfield, 12 miles away.
Wow.
What?
Yeah. So amazingly, these all the 4 people in the car survive. And obviously, they're a little concerned about their fate after that, because they get in the car on a flat. One of the tires is flat, and they drive the car. Again, this is 1 a.m. They just drive the car through back roads as far as they can go. They run it off like in the ditch and crash on a farm, and then they run into the woods. And by that time, like, the sun's almost coming up. The cops are looking for them. The dogs are out, airplanes are circling, and so they just pretty quickly give themselves up that morning. But three people, everyone except Bobby's girlfriend. This was confusing. I tried to button this up nicely, but I couldn't find any more information. But 3 of the people, Bobby, Gerald, and Gerald's wife, were all charged with second-degree murder. Bobby Schuler was sentenced to 99 years in prison, but was paroled after only 8 years. Gerald was sentenced to 10 years, but was paroled after only serving 5. And it appears that Gerald's wife didn't serve any time. Like, she.
How did Gerald do more time than old Bobby Lee?
No. Bobby Lee served 8 years of 99.
I thought you just said that Gerald served 10 years.
Gerald was sentenced to 10.
Oh, sorry.
Served 5.
Okay.
So, and the argument the whole time from the defense was they were drunk, and even though they knew that the trucks carried dynamite, that he wasn't trying to kill anybody. He was literally just trying to disable the trucks, as demonstrated what he did previously in the night, which was just disable a truck. Random.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
Never heard about
dynamite explosion.
How big was that crater?
On an interstate. 50 feet long, 70 feet wide, and 25 feet deep. That is a deep hole.
That is a deep hole in the earth.
There's some pictures. We'll put one on the show notes, but there are some pictures. It's impressive.
Yeah. If nothing else on these bonus segments that we do, just learning this weird, crazy kind of stuff. I mean, did you guys ever imagine that you'd learn about the demise of the American chestnut
No,
tree?
Never thought I would.
I mean, I know, guys. You're welcome.
Well, listen, I mean, the folks that are in our group so far, I think they find this stuff interesting because I used to do this stuff in my free time, and I would just like text Dave and be like, "Yo, did you know?" Blah 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 blah.
Well, I think
now
that
I get to share
I think it
on a
resonates
podcast.
with people. I mean, one of the most popular podcasts has been around forever. Is Stuff You Should Know.
Yeah.
Right. And that's still, people still love that. And they just have an entire show filled with a lot of this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And so I'm glad that we do this.
Yeah,
It's
there
good.
you go.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of the You Can Man podcast. Make sure to check out our Facebook group page. And hey, take some time to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll catch you next time.